No one leaves their homes in Sheffield. That's what we're told from birth, and it has so far been true. It had been like that since before I was born. I'd never been outside, never seen the sun, except through the windows of the living room. My mother said that the air outside was poisonous, that the sun would cook you like a chicken in a microwave if you went out into it. And until I saw the boy, I had never seen anyone outside, besides the occasional bird or bit of wildlife. Sheffield had been a city that lived mostly underground since 1963. They taught us this in history, something we learned from an early age in the dank little tunnels where children were taught. The war hadn't affected us much. Sheffield was a coal mining town in the Appalachian Mountain. Though some of our young men had gone off to fight, the only one who hadn't come back was Bobby Marks, and that's because he had decided he liked living in England with his new wife more than he liked living in the mountains. The government people had bought our coal for the war effort, and the town had done as well as it ever did. Then, the United States had begun a silent war with Russia, a war that Russia had used as an excuse to strike first. My teacher told us how the sirens had gone off one night, and everyone had gone down into their cellars, expecting a tornado or something. The tone had been different, though. It wasn't like the tornado sirens. It was something else. The ground had shaken a little. There had been some bright flashes, described by those who were brave enough to look out in the sky. And then, silence. The sirens never went off again, but as they hunkered in their cellars, the radio broadcasts began. They told us not to go outside, not to leave our houses until further notice, and the longer it took for further notice to get here, the less we felt like waiting. Sheffield was a mining town. Mining was all they knew, so they dug. Almost every house had a pick and a lantern, and it was easy to dig into the foundations and out into the world. It started as tunnels between houses, then it was tunnels into town. Before long, everyone's house was connected by some sort of tunnel. The tunnels became our roadways, and we could go anywhere with the tunnels. And some people had even sacrificed part of their homes to brace them. A few people had completely deconstructed the second layer of their houses to provide bracing for the tunnels, and we were more or less a town full of moles. No one went outside. It was forbidden. Most people had chains on their doors, just like my parents did. Why would you want to go outside anyway? There was nothing out there but radiation and poison gas. The Russians had probably taken everything over out there anyway, and it was a wonder they hadn't kicked in our doors and made us go fully underground. So, we stayed underground, and only came above ground during daytime, when it was safe. Safe and boring, that is. That was how I saw him, the little boy out in the snow. I was sitting at the window, something I'd been told not to do, but I did it anyway. There was a big window in the living room, and you could see through parts of the plywood to the outside. It was winter, and most of what you saw this time of year was snow. I remember liking the summer even better. You could sit and look out the hole in the window and see flowers and sunshine. You could almost trick yourself into believing that it was safe to go outside. I knew it wasn't. Everything outside would kill you, but it was still nice to look and think about basking in the sun or rolling in the grass. I was at the window, thinking about a picture book that I had seen where someone had built a snowman, and that was when I saw him. He looked to be about my age, this little boy in a coat and scarf and big thick boots. He was walking up the sidewalk, eating an apple and trudging through the snow. He had a stick in his hand, and he seemed to be using it as a cane as he walked up and down the sidewalk and looked at the houses. For some reason, I don't know, maybe he felt me looking at him. He turned and looked right at my window. I just stood there, wondering if he was a Russian spy or just some lost little kid who was out in the snow. He had to have some kind of oxygen mask or something. You couldn't just walk around outside. The The poison gas and the radiation would kill you after all. The longer I looked at him, however, the more I thought that he just looked like a regular kid. He didn't appear to have any kind of oxygen tank or any other thing, so I went into the kitchen, slipping past my mother as she cooked, and went down to the basement to talk to the only person who would likely listen to me. My grandpa, whom I always called Grum, had been living in the town since before everyone had gone underground. He had been a little boy, and now he had most likely lost his crackers, which was what Mom said. He sat in the basement and talked about things I didn't understand. He talked about grocery stores, which were places you could go and buy food. He talked about movie theaters, which were places you could sit and see a movie, whatever that was. He talked about playing stickball in the road, about riding his bike on the sidewalk, and all sorts of other things that sounded nice, but I'd never get to do. He was sitting in the corner by the radiator, one of those places he liked to sit, and he smiled toothlessly as I came up. "Hello there, Nancy Jane. Have you come to hear a story?" My name isn't actually Nancy Jane. It was my great-aunt's name, but it's what Grum called me, and I didn't correct him. "Grum, there's a little boy outside in the snow." Grum gave me an odd look, but he couldn't quite understand what I was talking about. Then he cackled and ran his tongue over his lips and started in on one of those stories that he likes to tell about long ago and far away. "My friends and I used to go out in the snow. We would make snow angels and throw snowballs at each other's, and sometimes we would make a whole man out of snow. It was so cold and wet, and if I close my eyes, I can still remember how it felt when I caught snowflakes on my tongue." As if to demonstrate, he ran his tongue over it and seemed to be trying to catch imaginary snowflakes. "No, Grum, there's a real boy. He's playing outside in the snow." "Fiddlesticks," he said, as he spat out a runner of chewing tobacco into a cup. "Nobody plays in the snow anymore. Those Ruskies dropped bombs and gas all over the place, and if you went outside, you'd be dead." "Well, it doesn't seem to be bothering him, and if you want to come have a look, I'll show you." Grum got ponderously to his feet and made his slow way up the stairs. My grandpa goes up the stairs the way a baby might. Every step seems to take him almost 2 minutes to navigate, and there were more than a couple of times I had to get behind him and push, so we didn't go down ass over tea kettle and land on the hard concrete floor. He did that last year, and, well, there'd been a loud snap as something in his hip gave out. Dr. Macklin came to see him, the old doc that used to practice in town, but now only practices underground. He gave him some pills, and he told him to feel better. He also told Grum to stay off his feet for a month, and Dad put him on a pallet down by the radiator. He had healed up okay, but there were a lot of us who had worried that he might die in the night sometime. It wasn't usually the broken bones that killed you, but when you're sedentary like that, especially underground, the rot gets in your lungs and you end up coughing yourself to death if the fever doesn't get you. It took almost an hour for him to get to the top of the stairs, but finally Grandpa and I made our way through the kitchen and to the window in the living room. I scoped it out and was glad to see that no one was hanging around. If an adult had been hanging around, they would have told us to get lost, and so it was always best to try to operate without being seen. Grum came shuffling up to the window like he meant to ask it for money, and as he pressed his eye to the little hole, he peeked for a very long time before shaking his head and looking at me. "Nancy Jane, I'm surprised at you. I thought we raised you better than to lie to your elders. There's no little boy out there. You must have the brain fever or something. I can't believe I got out of my nice warm spot and used up all that energy coming up the stairs just so you could play a trick on me." "Grum, it's not a trick. I saw a little boy in the snow. He's out there right now. But then I put my eye to the window, and there was nothing out there. It was all just snow. and nothing else. I found reasons to go back to the window for the next couple of weeks. I kept looking and hoping that I would see something, but I never did. It was all just snow and more snow. Sometimes I might see a leaf or a deer. The poison gas didn't seem to bother the deer, but I never saw anything else. I began to wonder if I had hallucinated all of it, and 2 weeks later I was peeking out the window when a gruff voice asked me what I thought I was doing. I turned around, hoping it was my Uncle Terry or maybe Brad, but it wasn't. It was Dad, and he looked mad. My dad was pretty good at looking mad. He had a big shaggy beard that went down midway his chest, and his head was as bald as Grum's. He was a miner, as most were here in town. He spent all his time down in the mines as he widened tunnels and found new shops to connect to. We hadn't managed to connect the entire town yet, not in the 3 generations since we'd gone underground. You had to be very careful where you came up at. If you came up on the surface, you might find poison gas or radiation, and then your whole team might be dead. "Just looking at the snow, Dad," I told him, hoping it sounded believable. He gave me a hard look, searching for a lie. But then he smiled underneath all that beard and patted me on the shoulder. "I hope one day your children get to play out in that snow. The radiation can't last forever out there, and we're lucky that we have the tunnels. Just be patient, Grace. If you're patient and brave, one day we'll get to go back outside again." "Dad," I said, as he turned around expectantly, "have you ever seen anybody outside?" His giant caterpillar eyebrow knit together as he thought about it, and he slowly shook his head. "Nobody goes outside, Grace. The poison gas and the radiation will get them." "Right, but I don't mean anybody from here. I mean, have you ever seen anybody outside that wasn't already outside?" The big, hairy eyebrow went up, and he came to sit next to me on the bench seat. "Did you see someone outside, Grace?" I wanted to tell my dad about the boy I had seen out there, but I thought it might be safer to shake my head and tell him no. He seemed relieved when I didn't confirm any such sightings. In reality, I think the knowledge that I had seen someone out there would have scared him more than the idea of me going out there. Dad, like most of the miners, believed that going outside was death, and anything or anyone that could survive out there would be very dangerous. "No, Grace, I've never seen anyone outside. No one can live outside. It's dangerous out there. The air is poisonous and the radiation would burn you to a crisp. There's no life outside for anyone. We have to hunker down and wait for the radiation to go away. You know this. Everyone knows this." I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions, but I knew from experience it was best not to. Instead, I nodded and said I knew, and he ruffled my hair and told me to get away from the window before the radiation burned my eyes. He said it kindly, though, as he said a lot of things kindly. My father could be gruff, he could be very stern, and sometimes he yelled, but he was also a good guy, and I was glad to have him in the house. Most of the adults in our community went about their business and didn't really interact with kids much. Adults like my grandpa and my dad were rare, and most of them seemed to be of the opinion that children should be seen and not heard. I didn't have all day to sit at the window, of course. Sometimes I had to go to school, and that took up a bunch of my time. School was fun sometimes, but a lot of it was just telling us about life before the war. They talked about a time before the bombs had fallen, when everyone was nice, and you could go outside, and you could play in the sun, and the world was a much better place. Most of the kids in school were around my age, but there weren't a lot of kids in general in the community. A lot of people just didn't seem to want to have children, so there were never a lot of us. After school, there were chores and meals and family time and bed. It was a bleak existence, but it was an existence. During one of these bedtimes, about a month after the boy in the snow, I found that I couldn't sleep. We all slept in the basement, since it was dangerous to spend too much time in the house, so I decided that I'd go upstairs and look out the window some more. Everybody said that the window was dangerous, but when everything is dangerous, then all the danger seems a little redundant. I had gone up to look out the window at night a few times, and it was always neat to see the way the street lights came on every night like clockwork. Whatever had been set up before the bombs had dropped persisted, and I wanted to see the way the street lights looked as they bounced off the snow. I came slowly up the basement steps, not wanting to bother anyone, and slunk through the kitchen and into the living room. I put my eye to the hole outside, and I thought for a moment that the streetlights on the snow had made a sort of optical illusion. Out in the middle of the street, the big round street that sits outside our house, was a truck. Someone was messing with something on the truck, and as the snow came down around him, he kept brushing it off his shoulders before he went back to work. He was saying something, but it was hard to make out. You couldn't hear him from so far away, and it wasn't as if I could get closer. He also did not seem to have a respirator or any kind of equipment to keep the poison gas out, so I wondered what sort of thing this was that could survive out in the radiation. I stared at him in disbelief, not understanding what he was, and when he finally finished with the truck, he put the old tire in the back and drove on. He didn't drive far, though, taking his truck into one of the houses not far from mine. He got out and walked inside, and that was the first time I noticed that there were lights on inside one of the abandoned houses across the street. Someone was living in our town, and it was rare to see. I should have told somebody. I should have told my dad at least, but I didn't. Instead, I started to wonder about the people who were living on the surface so close to us. Why didn't the poison bother them? Why didn't the radiation drive them underground? Did the people living underground know about them? I just kept thinking about it, and one day, as I was on a chore for my mom, I began to look at the tunnels that led to the various houses in my neighborhood. I started counting and realized that one would take me to the house I had seen. Would I still be able to get into the house through one of those tunnels? Or would they have buried it up? I didn't know, but suddenly I really wanted to. My mother had sent me out to buy mushrooms in the market that lay underground near the town square, but instead I made my way down the side tunnel that would lead me to the house that had been abandoned for years. The house had belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Welch. Their son had owned it after them, he and his wife, and when his family had died of pneumonia, Mr. Welch Jr. had decided to live in the underground tunnels instead of staying in the house. He said it reminded him too much of his dead wife, and that he could no longer bring himself to live there anymore. Lots of people had abandoned their houses. Most of them felt safer in the tunnels now, and I suppose that whoever these people were, they had decided to take the Welchel house and make it their own. I crept up the unused tunnel and found the ladder that would take me into the base. I paused on the bottom rung, wondering if I was really prepared to do this. As the minutes clicked by, I decided to stop being a baby and set my foot on the rungs and began to climb. I eased the grate up that covered the tunnel entrance for most of the houses in town. Looking around, I saw a basement pretty similar to my own. There was a washing machine and a radiator, boxes piled up full of useful things, and even some boxes that I didn't realize, which I suppose the squatters had brought with them. It wasn't until I had nearly come out of the grate that I saw someone looking at me from the washing machine. He was sitting on the washing machine as it rumbled along, eating an apple and reading a book. I don't know why he was sitting on it, and he didn't elaborate. He looked at me, and I looked at him, my body still half on the ladder as I tried to come out. And when he screamed and dropped what he was eating, I nearly fell down the opening myself. He went running up the stairs, yelling for his mother and saying there was a monster in the basement. I scampered back into the grate and hid near the base of the ladder. My heart was pumping a mile a minute, my breath coming in great, hitching gasps, but I realized that I had escaped before the boy could catch me. That's when I realized that the boy was the one from the snow, the very same one I had seen walk up the street. I was thinking about that as I heard the grate overhead grind upward, and I pushed myself against the wall as a flashlight searched. "I told you, Kyle, there's no monsters in the basement. It's just an old service tunnel, probably something to do with the electrical." The voice at the top reminded me of my dad, and it was more consoling than angry. "I saw something. They disappeared down into the tunnel, but I'm telling you, I saw somebody." "Lay off the comic books, kiddo. They've got your imagination working overtime." Then he let the grate slam shut, and I couldn't hear anything else. I thought about that exchange for a little while as I went to the market and got what my mom was after. I decided it might be risky to go back during the daytime, but I definitely wanted to know what was in that house and who these people were. I think that's when I decided that they were just normal people, not the monsters I had thought they were. I wanted to know how they could survive above the ground, but I also wanted to know if I could survive outside as well. I waited till everyone else was asleep that night, and then I snuck into the tunnels and went up through the grate again into their basement. There was no one there after dark. The dryer was quiet and the whole place was pitch black. It wasn't scary. When you live underground, you kind of lose your fear of the dark, and it was easy for me to make my way out of the grate and into the house. I went up the stairs, slow and steady, as I listened for squeaky steps and peeked under the basement door as I checked to make sure the kitchen was empty. All of the houses were pretty well laid out the same, so I felt sure that at the top of the stairs I would find a kitchen and a living room. I pushed the door and found it was unlocked, and as I came up into the pristine kitchen of whoever lived there, I heard people talking in the living room. I stayed low, moving, pressing myself against the wall, and listened to what they were saying. The woman was saying that it had been a mistake to come here. The man said the price had been too good to pass up. The woman said that Kyle was scared and said there was a monster in the basement. The man said that he was just a little kid and he was jumping at shadows. The woman said there were no children in the neighborhood for him to play with, and it was a little creepy to live in a dead town like this. The man said it would only be for another couple of months. The job he was working on would be over then, and they could go somewhere else if they really wanted to. He had hoped they might stay here so they could talk with some people about moving into the area, but he would understand if they wanted to go somewhere else. He added that the place was pretty creepy, and he might not mind leaving. They talked a little more, talked about things that I didn't really understand, and then they went into the back of the house and turned off the lights. I looked around the living room, but I didn't see anything that they might have used to breathe the poison air. I looked at the door to their living room and was surprised when I didn't see chains on it. All the doors in all the houses I had ever been to were chained shut, but these people didn't fear what was outside. I wanted to go outside right then, but the old fear kept me away. I snuck back to my house and managed to get back in my sleeping area before anybody woke up. I thought a lot about what they had said as I lay on my pallet. I've been thinking about what they said for the last couple of days, in fact. I've been back to the house with the people in it and observed them since then. They do not have any respirators. They do not have any means of neutralizing the poison. They just go out and breathe the air and live in the outside world. The man has a job, something he does for the government, he says. The woman takes the boy to school every day, and then they come home and eat dinner, they talk, they watch the weird picture box in the living room. We have a box kind of like that, except ours doesn't work. It just sits there like a dead eye, but theirs tells stories and sings songs and does all kinds of things. The boy has definitely seen me again, but his parents don't seem to believe him. He's afraid of me, though I'm not sure why. I've tried to communicate with him, tried to tell him that I won't hurt him, but he runs and hides and locks the door so I can't get to him. His parents are afraid he's having something called a nervous breakdown, but if he just talked to me, I could tell him what's going on. My father has definitely started noticing my absences. He says I'm getting older, and it's high time that I worked in the mines. He says I need to take my chores more seriously, and I need to help out more around the house. I've been skipping school so that I can watch the family, but it's only a matter of time until they notice. I want to know how they continue to go outside and don't get sick. I want to know the truth. And I think I've found it. I'm beginning to think that what I've been told is a lie. I don't think the air is poisonous outside. I don't think there's any radiation at all. I believe this because I finally had a conversation with the boy. I came out of the grate this time and found him standing a few feet away with a knife in his hand. He told me that if I came any closer he'd kill me, and I finally had a chance to hold up my hands and tell him that I didn't want to hurt him. He seemed surprised that I could talk, and I used the surprise to ask him questions. His name is Kyle. He used to live in Atlanta, but his parents moved here because his dad has a job in the next town over that pays him a lot of money. His parents said that they're only here temporarily, and they'll probably be gone by the end of the year. He's 11. He likes something called Pokemon, and he didn't believe in monsters until he moved here. I think that last one might have been a lie, but I didn't press him. When I asked him about the radiation and the poison gas, he seemed very confused. He said there's no poison gas, and if there's radiation, that it's not a lot. I told him how the Russians had dropped bombs on the town, and how they had put out the gas and the radiation to kill people. Kyle said that the Russians had never attacked America, not that he knew of at least, and that America had never been invaded. I told him how my people had passed down stories about the earth shaking, and Kyle said he believed that it was all sinkholes, something his father was here to investigate. He said his dad was here from the government doing a geological survey on the area, and they were looking for the source of all the sinkholes. Our town is of great interest to them, and they want to know why the soil seems so different here. I didn't understand everything he talked about, but I understood enough to know that we have been lied to for generations. There was no war. Russia never dropped any bombs on the United States, and the air is not poisonous. I went outside today. Kyle took me into the backyard, and as I took in a lungful of air, expecting to drop dead, I was pleasantly surprised when I was unharmed. I'm gonna go back and get some things. Then I think I'm gonna leave the tunnels. I don't know if my father knows that the air isn't poisonous, but now that I know, I can't keep living underground. I want to sit in the sun and roll in the grass and feel the snow on my tongue like Grum told me about. I'm going up above, and there isn't anything that anyone can do to stop me.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel, so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do. And it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.